What's up guys, Pi here. If you're new to this channel, I'm a long distance hiker, writer and video creator. Now it's about time for me to review the Keen Ridge Flex waterproof boots. I used these all throughout the spring until it got warm enough to use trail runners, and then when the weather started getting colder and wetter here in Finland in the fall, they came back out of the cupboard and have been on my feet for a number of trips now, so I feel ready to kind of dive in and give a full review of the boots. They're surprisingly nimble out on the trail and they just feel way less clunky than other boots that I've used. Keen is sponsoring this video and they did send me these boots, but I've been really impressed with them. I've actually liked them a lot more than I expected to for various different reasons. So the first thing I really like about the Keen Ridge Flex boots is the Bellow Flex technology that they've incorporated into the boot. I must admit, when I first received these boots from Keen, I thought it was honestly going to be a little bit gimmicky, especially when I opened the box and I saw the crazy neon yellow color that they've used on this particular model, but it's not. It's really not a gimmick. They've designed the Bellow Flex technology to basically flex more when you're hiking. That's probably the reason that they also feel pretty nimble out on trail, because when you're hiking, the shoe isn't fighting against you as much as it would with a heavier duty boot. Of course, if we compare it to something like this from Topo Athletic, which is a dedicated running shoe, you can actually see that this doesn't flex as much as I thought it would if you compare it to the Ridge Flex boots. It's somewhat comparable. Of course, these boots are more rigid and more stiff, you would expect them to be. Surprisingly not that crazy different though. One of the other main reasons that Keen developed this Bellow Flex technology was to increase the durability, and that brings me on to my next point about the boots. Of course, it's a little bit unfair to compare something like this to a trail running shoe, but I'm going to anyway, so why not? For example, this summer I hiked across Iceland wearing a pair of Ultra Lone Peaks, and by the end of the trip they were wrecked. Actually, a couple of weeks into the trip they were completely wrecked. But I've worn these for a number of trips now, and of course there is a little bit of scuffing to the leather, they're a little bit dirty, but otherwise they seem almost brand new. The tread is holding up really well, big grippy lugs on the bottom of the shoe, and that is something that I also really enjoy about them. For example, something like this, you're probably realistically going to get like 400 miles out of a trail running shoe. In my experience on my thru hikes of like the AT or the Continental Divide Trail, whereas on a boot like this, it's just going to be super durable. And I think that's going to appeal to a lot of people. Obviously, not many people are going out and doing long, crazy thru hikes. The average person probably that's going out backpacking is maybe going on one or 2 week trip a year, and then, you know, maybe a weekend trip a month at most, maybe some day hiking. And so a lot of people are just going to want a shoe that is very durable, and this does appear like it's going to be. Oh, and coming back to the Iceland hike, it was a crazy trip, like 25 days from coast to coast across Iceland. I am working on a vlog series from that trip, and I'm hoping that first video is going to come out probably sometime in January. So if you haven't already, then do please consider subscribing to my channel by pressing the little button right there. Something else that I really enjoy about the boots is how waterproof they are. They are marketed as a waterproof, breathable boot, and I found that to pretty much be the case. I've stomped through puddles intentionally, I've crossed small streams, and I've never had water leak into the boot. I think if you got to probably realistically about this point on the boot, this becomes some sort of kind of like textile mesh. I think if you got water up to this point, then of course you're going to start seeing it come through, but you can see inside the boot that the waterproof, breathable liner comes up to about here. On a 3-season hiking trip, I definitely don't want a waterproof, breathable shoe. I want something completely mesh that dries out as quickly as possible. But in the spring and the fall and the winter here in Finland, it gets very wet, it gets very cold. Like, people say that in my home country of England that it rains a lot, but Finland gets a pretty good amount of rain as well. When it's very wet and very cold, it is nice to have a waterproof, breathable shoe. I have found them to be somewhat breathable. Your feet are going to sweat in a boot like this. It's just kind of inevitable. Even if the temperature outside is pretty cold, your feet will still produce perspiration, and it's going to be more difficult for that moisture to escape than it would be from a shoe like this. But I've found them decently breathable. With a boot like this, or pretty much any shoe that I'm using for hiking, I'm gonna be wearing a sock that is primarily merino wool. So if it does get a little bit damp inside this boot, that merino wool will help to wick away a lot of that sweat, and as much of it will evaporate either out the top of the boot or through the boot itself. So, you know, seems like an obvious thing to say, but use good socks when you go hiking. Shoes are very, very important, but socks is key to avoiding blisters and hot spots. And then the final bullet point on my list of things that I like about this boot is just how comfortable it is. I mentioned in my original video on these boots how wide the boot is, and how kind of a wide toe box that Keen use. If you compare it to the Topo Design shoe, it's very, very similar in its shape. And for me, that's an absolute deal breaker because I have very wide feet. And so any boot or shoe that's gonna be narrow is just not going to work for me. And I found these fit the bill, or fit the foot really, really well. I'm not sure how well it'll come off in the video, but this upper portion here is extremely padded. Maybe you can see that, hopefully. And they just feel really good when you lace them up. I've hiked quite a good distance in these boots now, and I've never had a blister, I've never had any hot spots. So very, very comfortable boot in my experience. Now on to just a few things that I don't like about the boots. My number one complaint with these boots, and I addressed it in the original video, is that the laces are just too short. I like to have my shoes fairly loosely laced up. I also have pretty wide feet. What I actually end up having to do is I lace the boot up using these little hooks or clasps or whatever you want to call them. Hang on a second. I use these ones here, but I can't lace up with the top ones because if I lace the boots up using that top clasp, then I can't tie my laces the way I like to because I run out of lace, and then I end up fiddling around with these tiny little pieces of string trying to get it tied up, and it just doesn't work for me. Otherwise, the laces themselves are good. They're thick, they're solid, they seem to grip. When you tie a knot, it doesn't feel like they're ever gonna come undone. I just wish they were a little bit longer. The final thing I don't like about the shoe is this particular colorway. I know that they sell a bunch of different options now on the Keen website, all different kinds of colorways, but this particular colorway for me is just kind of a no-no. When I'm on a hiking trip, not really an issue. I don't really care when I'm out in the woods. But for example, around town, in the winter time here, it's nice to wear a warm, comfy pair of boots, but I'm less likely to wear them around the city with this crazy luminescent green colorway. Now I've covered some of the things I like and some of the things I don't like, I'd like to talk about who these boots would be suitable for and who they wouldn't be suited for. First of all, who they wouldn't be suited for, honestly, a thru-hiker. Most thru-hikers don't need a boot like this. Most thru-hikes are conducted in kind of the spring, summer, early fall times, and you just don't need a waterproof boot in those conditions, in my experience. However, I would say that the majority of people that like to spend time outdoors don't only like to do it in those particular conditions. So for example, in the spring or the fall, when your pack's maybe a little bit heavier, the conditions outside are worse, it's wet and it's cold and it's damp. This might be a suitable boot for those people if they are looking to do that. That's exactly my use case, where I use a trail runner in the summertime and then want a heavier, well, I don't want a heavier boot, but I want a warmer, waterproof boot for those conditions. And the downside of that is the boot is going to be a little bit heavier. So, who should buy these boots? Someone that is transitioning from a heavy, bulky leather boot and is looking to eventually transition down to something like a trail running shoe. This might be a nice stopgap between those two things. If you're looking to lower your overall base weight, then watch a bunch of my other videos because I give a bunch of tips on how to do that. But if that's you, if you're trying to look towards lightening up your base weight and moving to trail running shoes, then this will be a really good option for you. It still has quite a lot of flexibility, it's pretty nimble, but you still get that ankle support that you would get from a heavier, bulkier boot. I think this boot is really well suited to weekend warrior type hikers. If you wear this boot for a weekend trip once a month, you are realistically going to own these boots for years before you need to replace them. So that's pretty much my summary on the Keen Ridge Flex waterproof boots. I've been very, very impressed with them. I'm going to be using them going forward in my shoulder season trips. I think they're a fantastic option for you. I'm going to leave links in the description where you can buy these boots. If you use that link, you do help support this channel and it doesn't cost you anything extra. If you have any more questions, then please do leave them in the comments. Don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button, and I will catch you in the next video.